All right, welcome to the Orange Boy Inquiry, where three boys talk about movies that they like and also enjoy the color orange. Today's episode is brought to you by Blind. Are you sick and tired of online dating? Are you sick of making judgments purely based on the looks of a person or the things that they say about themselves in their bio while looking for that special someone? Then Blind is the app for you. It's the only dating app with no photos or bios. Now you can feel like you're truly falling in love instead of falling into superficial relationships you get with other dating apps. Studies have shown that blind people have more successful and fulfilling relationships because they don't judge their potential partner based on superficialities like physical looks. On Blind, we aim to simulate the blind dating experience. You can record 5 1.5-second audio clips to give a basic idea of what your voice sounds like. Messaging is all through Morse code to ensure that your conversations are auditory and direct. Download Blind today and enter promo code BLINDOrangeBoy to get a 50% discount on a yearly subscription, which includes heard receipts in messaging and a weekly mail-out newsletter printed in Braille. And remember, love is blind. Okay, so welcome back to the Orange Boy Inquiry. Like was stated before, we are three boys who like the color orange and like to talk about movies. Today's topic I am especially excited about. First of all, this is exciting because we get to do this whole podcast remotely from different parts of Utah, so it's pretty fun that we get to be able to stay in contact with each other like this. And this is something that we three have talked about many times before, but never in a podcast format, which is why I'm excited about today. So the topic for the day is the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Sequels.
I
I'm
know.
Jared.
I know. Oh yeah, sorry. We got Jared. We got Niall.
And Lucas.
And Lucas, great.
Right.
Sorry,
Second
we're
episode,
still
going great.
We're working on the professionalism still, but I know that we've all got pretty strong feelings one way or the other towards the sequels. First of all, just to kind of start it off, because I know things might get a little hairy. What are some things? What are some things that you guys like about the sequel trilogy?
All right.
I love the cast. First of all, I think pretty much everybody they cast is great for the role they play. I mean, I'm not a fan of these movies. I love the seventh one. I think we'll get into it a little more, but I think overall, the cast, the music, the direction, like I think all of those are really good. I think most of my issues come with the script, but yeah, I mean, I think they're still true to the space adventure that we know and love. So
yeah,
right on.
I agree with that about the cast. I think they all perform their roles very well. I think that the visual effects in these three are great as well. I just rewatched them this last week, and especially episode 9, that really had some cool effects. They had some really cool ideas that they were able to put in that movie that I think worked really well. But I also agree with Jared in the fact that I think the biggest downfall of these three movies are the writing.
Yeah, I would basically just agree. A lot of it for me is visual. There's a lot of really cool visual storytelling, especially with 7, where you watch it and you feel like you're watching the original trilogy.
Yeah, amen.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I really love that. And also all of the cinematography in 8 and 9 is beautiful as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I would agree. My what I think was the biggest downfall was just kind of the lack of a roadmap. You know?
Absolutely.
The writing just felt pretty disjointed between the three movies, and it shows.
Yes, for sure.
But with that being stated, I think I don't know. I don't know. It's I would say that my prediction is that of the three of us, I have the most positive view of the sequel trilogy.
I think that's true.
Probably, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's get into this,
We'll
boy.
see.
Let's get into it.
Like
This is-
Lucas, I did also watch all three of the sequels this week. I actually watched all three of them in one day.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
way
so,
too much time on your hands.
Yeah, well, it was a off class day. So
nice.
Yeah, I will note for everybody listening, I haven't seen 8 or 9 since it released in theaters. I just have had no interest in watching either of those movies again.
Wait, you haven't seen 8 in like 3 years?
No, but I have watched 7 actually quite a bit. I do like that one a lot.
okay, all right.
All right,
Well,
so
we've all come with some questions
Yes.
prepared. So who is it that's going first? I've
you are
drawn a
right.
blank.
You,
am
my
Am I
liege.
going? Oh, right, because I'm captain of this episode.
Yeah, Niall chose
All right.
this theme for the week, so
So I just was worried that we weren't going to be talking about 8 enough today. And so my question is very general, and it is, what is your opinion of 8 and why? Because I
Okay.
feel like this movie was really divisive. You know?
yes.
And so
Right.
I wanna see what you guys think.
Yeah, so 8, 100% is my least favorite of the 3. I think it's maybe my least favorite Star Wars movie that has ever come out.
Wow, that is
I
a
think
bold
Jeez,
statement.
dude.
I think the pacing of this movie is just horrendous. I think the structure of it, just going from point A to point B, and they're just cruising along in their cruiser this whole time, just it doesn't make for a very compelling story, I think. You know, everything
Right.
else, the time it's very like, you know, which way do we go next? Which way do we go next? And you're jumping from one point to the next. But this one, it's just a straight line, very slow. Everything's built around this like chase. This is
Okay.
air quotations for those who can't see. But it's just so slow going in a line. And I don't know. I feel like another thing is it took the 7th movie and it just kind of tossed it over its shoulder like Luke Skywalker tossed his lightsaber over his shoulder. And it's just, I don't know. It has the most unnecessary storyline of them all with the new Jar Jar Binks of the series, Rose.
Oh, that's brutal.
Anyway, I think you can tell I really don't like these ones, and I think it should not have been made. Let's get to Lucas.
Okay.
Okay, overall, I like this one. All right, but it does not belong in this trilogy. Like, if this was not episode 8, I think it would be much better. If this was just like a separate thing, and these weren't characters that were all like tied together and that we knew, I think it would be much better, because Rian Johnson, the writer and director, said he didn't really know what to do with Finn and Poe. He was just focused on Kylo and Rey, which I actually I loved that part of the movie. That is my favorite part of the movie, is the Kylo Rey dynamic.
Great.
And like the whole Snoke thing, like I love that part of the movie. But basically everything else is just very hard to like, especially the Finn and Rose side story, because it's completely pointless. Nothing comes
absolutely.
as a result of them leaving, going to Canto Bight and saving the Fathiers and whatever other bull crap they do. It's just so meaningless.
But she saves him in the end. The
Oh, yeah,
sacrifice.
you're right.
It was
Sorry.
beautiful.
Literally, that whole story is only there to make sure that Finn fights Phasma at the end.
Yeah,
Which
really.
was fine.
Which even then, yeah.
You know?
And it's like,
I don't know.
I'm not as big of a hater of the whole Luke being a depressed hermit thing as other people are. I think, I think a lot of the problems that came from this spawned as a result of what happened in episode 7. I think if Luke would have been a part of episode 7, then 8 would have been completely different. And I think it goes back to what we were saying a little bit earlier with this whole trilogy overall not really having one person guiding the ship along. I mean, you had J.J. Abrams direct 7 and 9, but Rian Johnson was able to do whatever the heck he wanted with episode 8, and I really like his stuff. I really like what he did on Breaking Bad. I like Knives Out a lot, and I like episode 8 overall, but I think it just does not fit into this universe and just this trilogy. And I'm excited for him to get more Star Wars because it's going to be completely separate. I think that's going to be way better than what he had to do with this.
Right, because he's writing and directing a trilogy.
Correct.
For our listeners who aren't aware, and I'm stoked about it. Personally, loved 8 when I saw it.
Yeah.
In theaters, I saw it. I saw it a bunch of times in theaters, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
But then I hadn't watched it again until this week, since basically the couple of months after it had come out, and I was nervous to watch it again because I was scared that I tend to really like movies when I see them in theaters, like Justice League.
Yeah. Likewise.
And then the next week I'm like, oh no, that was actually terrible. And so I was nervous to go back and watch this one. But when I did, I fell in love with it. I love almost every moment of this movie. The stuff on Canto Bight with Finn and Rose is annoying and unnecessary. But I do kind of appreciate that little bit of world building. Like, I think that planet is super cool. And the whole concept of the morality of, like, supplying weaponry to warlords and stuff, like, to both sides of the war, I think is really cool.
And that would have been a cool episode of, like, the Clone Wars. You know?
Right, exactly.
It's
like
been in the movie.
Well,
right. But for what I think is that more than anything, I really love the stuff, like we were saying, between Rey and Kylo. Their little conversations with each other are super cool. And then the reveal at the end that Snoke was using Kylo's pull to the light side to draw Rey to him, and it was all Snoke's doing, I think is so cool. And then, of course, that fight in his throne room with the Praetorian Guards is on another level of Star Wars action. And I just love it. One of the things that I was most excited about with this episode, though, is that it set up a wonderful climax. Like, the last movie should have been great. But then they came out with, Episode 9, The Emperor's New Groove, and it just...
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later, but let's focus on 8 for right now because I have a lot more to say about Episode 9 than I do about Episode 8.
Right. Same.
No worries.
But no, I will defend until I die that Episode 8 is a good movie. And I'm excited to see Rian Johnson's trilogy.
I want to say I'm very happy you guys did get stuff out of this. I'm not like a movie hater. I love, even if I don't like a movie, if somebody else likes a movie, I think that means that the movie has value. And so whenever I hear good things about 8, it makes me more accepting of it as a movie and as a part of the trilogy.
Right.
But overall, like, I just am not a fan. And I'm glad we have that perspective.
Yeah.
Like, so we can cover all the bases.
For sure.
And I really like to like movies. I'm generally much more positive when I watch movies. I like to look at, because, it's a guy or a girl or whoever who's putting a lot of time and effort into making this. And I try and look for the good stuff, even when it's not my favorite. Right. And so, and there is genuine, honestly, the first time that I saw Episode 8 in theaters, that was, one of the coolest theater experiences that I ever had. It was so awesome. I knew nothing about it coming in. I was like, wow, there is some really cool visual stuff. There's some cool... I went into 8 and I was like, my only expectation is that there are Force ghosts. And when Yoda showed up, I was like, cool. I'm appeased. Cool. I love...
That scene.
People will trash on 8 because of the way that Luke was depressed because he failed and whatever. And I feel like that's... if you put yourself into Luke's shoes... I feel like that is how, if I was in that similar situation, I feel I would have a similar reaction.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
It's superhuman. It makes more sense. I get that Luke is, the hero of the galaxy and everything, but...
we got some danger going on somewhere.
Yeah, did you hear those sirens? Sorry.
Some ambulance stuff.
They're looking to lock me up for my opinions on Star Wars.
But... I do want to talk a little bit because we started inching into 9 there on my comments a little bit. And that relates pretty dang well to Jared's question, which I'm excited to talk about.
Yes. Yeah,
Can you bring up your question, dude?
Yeah, no. So my question, this was the big reveal of 9.
Yeah.
Rey is a Palpatine, right? She is
a Palpatine.
A Palpatine. I'll call him Apple Palpatine, and I just can't say it any other way. She's the granddaughter of good old Apple Apple Palpatine. I wanted to ask you guys, did this lineage land? You've heard of Granny Smith?
Yeah.
You've heard of Fuji? But have you heard of Apple Palpatine?
Palpatine? The most shrivelly apple there is.
Okay,
anyway, Sorry. Did it work for you? And if it didn't, who would you replace? How would you fix it?
So...
Lucas.
No, not at all. I think this is one of the worst parts about Episode 9. The worst overall part about Episode 9 is that they just retconned everything about Episode 8. 7 to 8 and 8 to 9 are just completely disjointed. But the fact... Okay, another thing I loved about Episode 8 is it made the Force way more accessible. Way more just like, cool, all right, like... Broom Boy can have the Force, and Rey, who actually doesn't need to be anyone, she's just some random scavenger. Like, I loved how she was no one. Like, that worked perfectly.
Absolutely.
All these fan theories and everything like that, it didn't need to end up being anyone special. And Rian Johnson, also, when he was sitting down writing the script, he was like, we were trying to figure out what would make the most sense, and we just determined that it wouldn't make sense for her to be related to anyone, so we decided to just have her be no one, which works really well because it's like,
wonderful.
You know, there's always already a Skywalker in the trilogy, right, with Ben Solo, and so I don't think you need to add more lineage to this because Rey works. Like there's nothing that is added by her becoming a Palpatine. She's still a cool character from 7 and 8 just because she like is a cool character. She doesn't. It's like, oh, we make her a Palpatine, that automatically makes her more accessible and cool. It does it has an opposite effect. So I think they should have just let her be no one. I don't think she needed to be a Skywalker or a Kenobi or a Solo or a Palpatine or a Windu or anything. She
would have been a great Windu.
I heard the Windu theory. I thought that was awesome.
And just to kind of go back a little bit to Episode 7 with this question, I think a lot of the problems overall with this trilogy started with Episode 7. 7 is my favorite of the trilogy, but the thing that 7 did was set up way too many mystery boxes and just like, what's happening here? Because Star Wars has never been about that. Yeah, sure, Darth Vader telling Luke he's his father is one of the coolest reveals ever, but that was never really a question in Episode 4. It wasn't like, I wonder if Darth Vader is actually Luke's father or anything like that. That wasn't even slightly implied. And so with Episode 7, you have Rey's heritage, you have Snoke's heritage, you have the lightsaber, you have all sorts of crap that is just so unnecessary that makes you think like, I love theorizing just as much as the next guy, but at the end of the day, J.J. Abrams is the king of doing that crap. And so him doing it in Episode 7 made it so the other two ended up being super disjointed. And I think it just didn't need it. And so I think, in response to Jared's question, just leave her as a no one.
Yeah. I'm going to be pretty brief on my answer because I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Lucas just said. I think that reveal of her being a nobody is one of my favorite things about 8. And the whole broom kid at the end of 8, I love the concept that he was going for. It's basically, you don't have to be a part of a family to be a powerful Jedi. Yeah. Which is also a message that's conveyed through the prequels a little bit. Like, there are tons of really cool, powerful Jedi in the prequels.
Yeah, across the entire galaxy.
Yeah, from other material, like Clone Wars and, like, the Knights of the Old Republic. Like, there are tons of really cool, powerful Jedi that aren't Skywalker blood, you know? And so I loved that reveal. I like the rumor that I wanted just because I figured that it would get us more time with Ewan McGregor somehow was Kenobi.
Yeah.
I was really kind of hoping for that, but when they revealed that it was nobody, I was ecstatic in the theater. I just loved that. And then, really, in 9, what I love about the prequels is that George Lucas, despite negative critical review from the first and the second, still made the third really good. And like stuck with it, you know? Whereas this one, I feel like they got a lot of backlash from what happened in 8. And so the studio was like, oh, we have to change all of the decisions that were made.
Yeah.
And instead of that giving the fans what they wanted, what it did is it made it so that 9 made no sense.
Yes.
And they spent an hour of a 2 hour and 20-minute movie just retconning stuff that happened in the 8th.
Even more than that, honestly.
It was a real problem.
So much of that movie is just retconning.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so it falls pretty hard because of that. But I love Rey's lineage being nothing, and I personally still kind of think of her that way instead of thinking of her as a Palpatine.
Oh yeah, you can headcanon your own crap. And
yeah,
I
exactly.
do.
True. Yeah. I mean, I think you both have very good answers, being the same. Niall was so close to being right, though, because the actual answer is a Kenobi. Think about it. Think about being able to have another fight scene, a Skywalker versus a Kenobi, maybe reprising Duel of the Fates. Come on.
Yeah, and Battle of the Heroes even.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Battle of the
That's very
Heroes.
true.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, maybe have like a cool like Force Ghost scene at the end, you know, how they all like are talking to her. Like that was at the end of 9. That was kind of, I don't know. I feel like it was a lost moment. But if just Ewan McGregor's Force Ghost would have showed up, he's like, use the Force, Rey. You know, come on, that would have been awesome.
That would have
been so cool. And then plus, I read online somewhere that just this idea, the concept of the end of the series being a Kenobi saving a Skywalker from the dark side, that would have been so rewarding.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That would have been this moment that failed to happen like 2 times already.
Right.
But then like being able to bring it home with, you know, with Rey reaching out to Ben and just saying, hey, you know, like, come home with me. And then, come on. That would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yes. I think
it would have made most sense to have her be nobody, but I think there would have been a lot to do if she had a Kenobi.
I agree. And I think if she were to have been anyone, Kenobi definitely would have been my ideal choice, because then it would have given something cool to kind of explain in the Kenobi series as well. It would be like, okay, well, who did Obi-Wan like hook up with or marry during his time on Tatooine, and then who, like, Rey's parents can still be no one. Like, that's fine.
Right.
But then, you know, being from Kenobi heritage or whatever.
The thing about the Kenobi heritage, though, real quick, and then we're going to move on to Lucas's question, which I'm also excited about. But with Kenobi heritage, it kind of goes against Kenobi's character, because he, especially in the prequels, is kind of the goody-goody Jedi who doesn't break any rules. And the Jedi don't... they're like priests, you know? Like, they don't...
We were all hoping he'd get some, though. He deserves it. He's had a stressful life.
Well, I mean, if
that's true.
If you've seen the Clone Wars as well, they give him a love interest.
Yeah, but it's like a flirtation ship, isn't it? Like, it's not even.
Yeah. It's not anything like Anakin and Padme. But I thought that was like, okay, Obi-Wan is like a human being with, you know, human emotions.
Right. That's
so I
cool.
like that they did that, and it also means it could have happened again. You know, he could have found some other sand reister on Tatooine and.
Okay, Lucas, will you read us your question?
I would love to give you my question. If you could change... Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things. Well, I think the meat of this conversation is going to come from my question, because I have a lot of things that I want to say, but I want you two to go first.
Same.
So if we end up being a little bit more than a half hour, I'm not going to be opposed to that. Hopefully.
Me too.
Okay,
Hopefully
so if you could change any one thing... Yeah, exactly. Hopefully they can get over it. But if you could change any one thing about the entire trilogy, what would it be and why? Just one thing from any episode. You can explain how the repercussions would follow that, but what would it be?
Yeah. So mine is somewhat connected to what Jared said, but I would just say the presence of Palpatine in 9 altogether. As anything outside of like the Sith version of a Force ghost. That could have been cool if he appeared that way to Kylo or something. But the idea that I've always had, this is going to be a little bit of a pitch for what Episode 9 should have started out as.
Sure.
So
Please.
imagine that it starts out basically the same way. Kylo Ren on some planet killing a bunch of people. But instead of this being random people and him looking for some Sith map, it's a rebel base that he's located. And he's killing everybody hoping to kill Rey because she didn't join him. And she's not there. And so he's mad. You get his theme going. Bum, ba, da, da. Oh no, that's Battle of the Heroes. I can't think of his theme right now.
It should have been.
But Battle of the Heroes should be in there too. It's the ba 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 ba. So he goes up into his ship and he starts, praying to Darth Vader's helmet again, as he does.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Help me finish what you started." Oh no. Did we lose connection for a second?
No, we're still here.
Oh, I lost connection. You guys disappeared. We'll cut this out. Or not. But we'll fix it in post. But he's praying to Darth Vader's helmet, and he's like, "Help me finish what you started. I can't finish what you started without Rey, or with Rey still here." At which point, boom, you get Hayden Christensen, Force Ghost, as Anakin,
Yes.
appears to him. And he basically says, "Listen, I changed. I realized what was happening and I killed Palpatine. Like, I turned against that and I turned to the light, basically, to some degree. And so, by doing what you're doing, you're not finishing what I started. Because I started a change from the dark to the light." At which point,
Interesting.
Kylo Ren smashes Darth Vader's helmet and the Force Ghost disappears. Because now Kylo is so possessed by his own idea of what he should be doing that even his main inspiration appearing to him and speaking to him can't change his mind. And at that point, he goes full bad guy, and he is Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, and he is the villain of 9.
Okay. And are they going to be actively? So then instead of like this race for a map, like how do you what are you seeing on the rebel side of it? Like, are they just standing against Kylo Ren and his forces?
On the rebel side of it, they have located. They caught wind of this attack on their rebel base, right? And some survivor, probably not Rose. Hopefully not Rose. We hope she died in that attack. Has basically said, like, "Hey, this just happened." They somehow, I don't know. I haven't thought much past the Kylo Ren arc of it. But what it would be is basically they know where Kylo Ren is at, so they are trying to group together some rebels. Not the way that it happened in 9, where it's a big on your left and they all come out of the portals like in Endgame. But it's more of like a...
Rise of Skywalker.
But...
when Doctor Strange showed up.
Yeah.
But it would be more of like a group together, a ragtag team that comes on and tries to take down the ship while Rey and Kylo have a 1v1 face-off.
I love it.
Yeah.
See,
so,
I mean, I only ask because that was also my answer. I wouldn't have Palpatine in it at all.
Right,
I mean, I don't have
Palpatine.
like a huge... Apple Palpatine should not have been in it. Maybe Granny Smith, but not
Right.
not Papal. I think his presence was just, it was so like the effect, the presence he had was just a watered down version of him in the originals. He's moved, like, we've moved past that, and like we were talking about, it's just retconning everything that has happened before. And I don't love 8, clearly.
Right.
But I think we should have now built a script.
Just buckle down
that
and
does
just
not.
Yes.
Just commit to it. We shouldn't have.
Yeah,
been like,
exactly.
Hey, remember this? Oh yeah, that doesn't matter. Or remember this?
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. Like,
Right.
it just just committing. I'll say that is what should have changed.
Yeah,
Is,
I agree.
Like we've discussed so many times now, is there should have been a roadmap. I don't care if it was one director the whole time, but there should have been a cohesive story. When J.J. Abrams brought up these questions in the first one, he should have had an answer for them already.
Yeah.
He should have had a way to build to those. And I don't know everything behind the scenes, but clearly that didn't happen. And so they should have just taken it out, made Rey a Kenobi, and just went with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the dumb thing about 7 is it's like, oh, hey, so actually here's all these mysteries. Rian Johnson, you can solve them. I don't actually have any plans. Just do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if he was directing 9, that would be way different. But he's doing the middle one of the trilogy, which means there's one coming after. And obviously J.J. Abrams didn't know that he would be doing that one at the time either. But
Right.
man, yeah, my answer was also removing Palpatine from Episode 9 because I think
Should not have happened.
But I have another one. But that I think that is by far the stupidest decision that they made about any of these movies because it makes the original trilogy just invalid. Because it's like, oh yeah, Anakin's arc, Darth Vader's arc with overcoming his master. It's just like, nope. And a huge thing with the Sith versus the Jedi is that Sith cannot return as ghosts. That you have to use the light side of the Force. You can't use the dark side to come back as a ghost. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, the Sith try and prolong their life as long as possible. And he dies, like he blows up. He effectively dies in the same way in Episode 6 as he does in Episode 9. So it's like, how is that any different? Like, why are we supposed to accept his death in 9 versus Episode 6? Especially, and the other thing is, okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about Palpatine before I answer my other...
I think it speaks volumes.
With him...
That was all our answers.
It's just... Yeah, exactly. It was just like, with him being back, it also... Because it's just like, Kylo Ren shows up at the beginning of the movie, and it's like, I am back because the dark side of the Force is a pathway to things unnatural. It's like, okay, what?
Yeah.
That is not an explanation. So the expanded stuff that... Because the thing is, there's a lot of expanded stuff that expounds a lot on the stuff that happens in these movies. But the thing is, most people are not ever going to consume the expanded materials.
Exactly.
So you can't start the crawl of Episode 9 with the dead speak and have that message be in Fortnite the night before.
I know,
because
Fortnite, of all places.
That is not an accessible medium for people. Most people don't play Fortnite. Most people are not going to have been like, oh, I'm so excited for the night before Episode 9 comes out so I can go onto Fortnite and hear this cool message. Because that message is canon, and that's the one that everyone allegedly hears in Episode 9. And so just immediately, you're off on the wrong foot. And so with Palpatine being back, they're like, okay, he's a clone, basically, is how they explain him being back, and his spirit just moved into a clone. It's like, why would you clone yourself as a resty old man? Like, just destroyed. Why wouldn't you clone yourself as a young person? Because the other thing is, to get around the obviously disgusting image of Palpatine having had to have had sex at some point because Rey is his granddaughter, they say that his son, in quotation... His son, in quotation marks, is a clone of himself. Which is like, what? If it's just a clone of himself, like, that's as much of a son of Jango Fett as Boba Fett is. So, like, whatever, they've done it before. But why not have just cloned yourself as a young person and put your spirit into that body instead of just this gnarled up, destroyed old man? Like, I get that that's how he probably would have looked if he would have actually survived, falling down a thing. But...
Right.
Yeah, there's just a lot that I could go on for longer. But my other answer to this question is, if I could have changed anything, it would have been back in 7. I would have had a scene with Luke, Han, and Leia all together. And because I think one of the biggest travesties of having a sequel trilogy to the original trilogy is that there's not one single frame in this entire trilogy that took years and years to make where the original trio are all together. And I think if you would have had Luke be a bigger part of Episode 7, you could have had that before Han dies. They could have all been together on the Rebel base, and then Han could have died, whatever. You can have still that arc, and Luke can be a part of it, but just the fact that they were able to bring all three of them back, and now obviously Carrie Fisher is dead, so they just can't get that. That moment is gone. There's just no possibility of that. And so I think just at some point during the trilogy, having those three be together, share a scene. It doesn't even have to be a huge part of it. Because I get that they wanted to introduce new characters as a part of Episode 7, and I really appreciate that. But I also understand that, they should have understood that the reason a lot of people are returning to these movies is because of how much they like the original trilogy.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, we're a little over on time, but I do want to talk a little bit about some fan question that we got. So we're just going to do a speed round on this one.
All right.
Because
Sounds
this one
good.
is pretty easy to do a speed round.
No,
first of all,
great.
we asked our listeners for questions, and we had a kind of an amazing amount of questions sent in.
Yeah, that was
so
awesome.
thank you everybody listening for sending in questions. We're going to keep asking for questions about our coming topics. So thank you so much for participating. This one was a question that was asked both by C. Ryle Brown and Cy Robinson. And it is basically, imagine they are going to redo this new sequel trilogy. What director are you putting in charge to write and direct? Like, who's running the new trilogy?
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, my answer is very basic. It's not crazy. I just think J.J. Abrams should have done all three. I think he was an outstanding choice on the get-go. Like, he was just... He's great at what he does, and he's a perfect fit. And just being able to have him do all three would make it cohesive. One roadmap, one plan. It's not getting mixed up. I think, J.J. Abrams.
Good pick.
That is also my answer, J.J. Abrams, because I think with Episode 7, he also started Lost, right? I love Lost, but a huge problem with Lost as well is that he didn't stick around for the entire show, and a lot of the little mysteries and crap that he sets up don't get paid off in the last season. And it's just like, well, we keep building this world, but we have no idea of how to pay it off or anything. And so I think if he would have come to Disney with a whole 3-movie arc, it would have been way better. I still enjoy Episode 8, but I think if he would have made 8 as well, then it would have made 8 and 9 much more cohesive with Episode 7.
Yeah.
So.
And it would have forced him to have a plan from the get-go.
Exactly.
Instead of just setting up questions and dumping them off. Okay, my answer is not J.J. Abrams. My answer, and this is controversial, George Lucas. I want him to just still be in charge.
Wow.
With much more studio oversight and much more capability to do CGI stuff, I think that George Lucas would have done an amazing job. However, the story would have been drastically different from what it ended up being from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, have you seen...
so it's a bit of a gamble.
Have you seen there's a book coming out about a lot of things Star Wars, and his original plan was that Darth Maul was going to be the main villain of 7 through 9.
And it was going to be a lot of crime syndicate stuff, and then that all got tossed out. Well, not tossed out. They used it in Clone Wars and in the Solo movie and stuff like that. But I would have... I want to see George Lucas's sequel trilogy. So that's my pick.
I think...
Good pick.
George Lucas, because George Lucas directed 4, not 5 or 6, and then the prequel trilogy. And I think that he is a good idea guy. I think he has some great ideas, but I don't think he's a very good writer or director. I think he's a good writer with other people. He's a good co-writer. Because a lot of what made the original trilogy really good was that his wife, Marcia, edited them, and she is a fantastic editor. And he lost...
Really?
They got divorced... between the original trilogy and the prequels. So she was not the editor of the prequels. And just, I think we'll talk about the prequels another time, but just with the sequels, it's just, there's a lot of things that are frustrating, and I could keep talking, but...
Right. If we could get a story by George Lucas, directed by J.J. Abrams,
there you go.
Same cast.
We fixed it, you guys.
Because they had a great cast. They really did. And I think, honestly, arguably... I would say that the dialogue in episode 9 is worse than the prequels, but it's delivered better.
Yeah,
because
see,
they were directed better. J.J. Abrams, I think, is a better director than George Lucas, but the writing of the dialogue, I think, is worse. And a few of the times in 9, I was rewatching, I was like, how is this what is happening? How is this the final movie of the Skywalker saga that we got?
There is a line in 9 that I love. This'll cap it off because we're
we'll
over.
end on this.
But
cool.
There is a line in 9 that I love at the very beginning when Palpatine is being revealed and Kylo's talking to him and he's like, I have been every voice, and then it turns into Snoke, you have ever heard, and then into Darth Vader, inside your head. And it's like, that is super cool. I think that concept, like, that line is cool, but there's just so many writing problems with, like, the lines are so dumb.
Yeah, that line is cool, but then it also just completely illegitimizes the fact that Snoke...
And Snoke was so cool in 7 and 8. He was so cool.
They should have just buckled down and just had Kylo Ren as the main villain of episode 9.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is it. Those are our questions. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to Blind for sponsoring this episode.
Oh, yeah, we cannot... lest we forget Blind.
And remember to follow us on Instagram is it just orange.boy.inquiry?
Oh, it's the orange boy.
The.orange.boy.inquiry.
Yeah.
If you search it without the dots, it'll still pop up.
Right. And just follow us on there because that's where we do a lot of our audience outreach. That's where we ask you guys for your questions and everything. And we'll see you next time.